Good morning. Good morning, traders. How are you all doing today? Karibuni sana. Glad you could all join us this fine Monday morning. Hope everyone is doing well and hope also you had a good weekend. So, for those who are new, my name is Mitch Kaniero and I'm a trader with Afriforex. I want to welcome you to another Afriforex daily analysis session. Now, us during these sessions, as the Afriforex team, we analyze the markets early in the morning, try to identify what trading opportunities we will be looking at taking for the day, and we do share that information with you. So remember, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box. The team will be there to respond to you, but I will look to address any and all questions asked on the chat box. So feel free to use that. So let's jump straight into it. As usual, we'll start off here with our watch list. So looking at Friday, let's go to Friday before we look at Monday, at least today. Now, on Friday, well, focus was looking for buying opportunities on the Canadian dollar and the US dollar. And our focus was on those two pairs, and we're looking to mix and match them with all the other pairs which were on the sell side. Now, today, the watch list is pretty similar in terms of the currency pairs. We will still be focusing on the Canadian dollar as well as the US dollar and mixing and matching them with the pairs on the sell side. However, the only change has been on gold, which on Friday it was on the buy side, but today it is going to be on the sell side. So this is going to be the watch list for today. Now, in terms of fundamentals, we do have a number of news events coming out today, especially during the London session. As you can see, we have a lot of euro fundamentals from 11:30, 12. Similar situation also with the British pound around 12:30. So there's a lot of PMI fundamentals coming out today. You can see it seems like it's a PMI day, and similar situation as well during the US session. So there could be some volatility. It being a Monday, it's not necessarily all the time that it ends up happening, but especially if there is at least a lot of news, that should boost the market. So since that being the case, remember, if you do manage to make any changes, feel free to join us on the Telegram channel. There should be a link for that in the video description below. So since this is also a Monday, we don't necessarily focus on screenshots, but remember, guys, if you do manage to take any setups based on things we do share, feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details are in the video description. So since we are basically going to be reviewing each and every pair, we'll start off with the Canadian dollar pairs, mix and match them with the pairs on the sell side. Before we move on to the US dollar, then we'll have a look at the indices as well as gold and silver. So starting off with the Canadian dollar pairs, we have the Australian dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, this is a currency pair we had on Friday. Yes, all the currency pairs we did have on Friday. So our focus was on these three levels, looking for selling opportunities. Now, during the session we had early in the morning, the price was within an area where there are buyers. So remember, we needed one of two things, either a breach to the downside or a pullback coming in. And we're hoping to see the price coming back in within this seller's area here. But as you can see, it just managed to get towards this seller right here. And if you do note the time, that was around 3:30, especially once the US market does open. You find the market opens at 3 o'clock, but if the news events at 3:30, which is most of the case most days, you will find the markets potentially moving at that time. But you can see the market did manage to get there before managing to come to the downside. So today, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. Now we have adjusted the level slightly. So our main seller's area is right there at the top. So as long as we're holding below this seller right there, our bias should be to look for selling opportunities. So right now, we're just in the middle of this particular area right here. So the hope would be for us to end up actually getting a pullback, or at least more of a pullback coming back in before we're able to find a selling opportunity. Or the alternative could be waiting for the price to actually break this area to the downside. We are able to get the price breaking and holding below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities then. Now, remember, the main reason why we don't necessarily encourage looking for trading opportunities now, either waiting for the price to come up. And I know a number of people have asked, why wait for the price to go down if it's already coming down? Why not just enter and sell there? Because remember, our focus is always risk to reward. So even if you jump in on a selling opportunity there, having a stop loss here is very obvious. So could find the safest place to put your stop losses there. And your first target area being here, you're risking 24 pips only to target 13. Now, in the long run, that would not make sense, and you'd actually end up losing in the long run. That's why we'd always wait for the price to potentially come up a bit higher. So in such a situation, that same trade, you could potentially even get almost a 1:4. So that's the reason why we'd rather wait for that, or wait for a breach to the downside and get the price holding below. that will give us a more comfortable selling opportunity there. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening on the Australian dollar against Canadian dollar as we move on to the next Canadian dollar pair we do have. So right here, we have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. And on Friday, our bias was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Remember, on Friday, was the price had reached this area to the upside. Remember pointing out that it was not very convincing the way the price was holding above this particular area. Most of the time, whenever we want a breach to the upside, we do want the price to actually go quite aggressively. And at that point in time, that we know the buyers are definitely there. But in such a situation where you find the market just breaking slowly and just holding, you can see it has gotten to such a level before. So this is, and that's the reason why our focus was on this particular area, hoping to see the price potentially give us a pullback. And you can see it did manage to do that. And remember, watch out for the market opening times. So that's 10, 11, 3, and 4:30. And you can see in this situation, the price was back within the buyer's area at 4:30. And that's when the price did manage to take off. So the buying opportunity did work out on Friday. And today, the buyers is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. But if you realize, we are back within a seller's area. So this is not the best place to look for your buying opportunities just yet. So remember, we need one of two things. These sellers could still easily react. I mean, they reacted there on Friday before. They could potentially end up reacting from there again. So wait to see what ends up happening. Either we'll end up getting the price giving us another pullback, coming back in within this support and resistance area before we're able to find the buying opportunity. Or you could find the fact that these sellers do not necessarily look very strong. There's a possibility that if we can get the price reaching to the upside, remember we want a strong reach to the upside. When we see the price holding above, then we should be able to look for a buying opportunity then as well on the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening, but ideally, that is our game plan for this currency pair. Now, the next currency pair we did have was a British pound against Canadian dollar. And on this pair, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out early in the morning. We were within the area where they're buyers. Similar situation with the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. So you all would see whether or not the London big boy is actually going to give you a pullback or actually breach the downside. So you can see in this situation, we did end up getting the pullback. As you can see from 11 o'clock, that's when the market started giving us that pullback. It approached this particular seller's area. We're hoping to see the price coming up a bit higher, but you can see it found some sellers within there, and you can see the type of reaction that we're getting. If you do note the time, that was at 4:30 during the New York Stock Exchange. So if you did miss that trade, you could have easily waited for the price to potentially come down. Once it did that, you can see we did end up getting a small pullback, and that could have actually been a selling opportunity available for you. So you can see this pair did work out on Friday, and today, bias is still the same, and the game plan is pretty much the same. So you can see we are within the same area, or at least we have adjusted the level slightly. But overall, our bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. But if you realize we are within an area where they're buyers. So similar game plan to Friday, either you could find the market actually giving us a pullback, coming back within this support and resistance area before we're able to find the price coming down lower, or you could end up finding these prices breaching to the downside. And if you do see them holding below, then you should be able to look for selling opportunities there as well. So wait to see what ends up happening. We'll wait for some correlation as well. We've seen something similar on the Australian dollar against Canadian dollar against Swiss franc, where we are within the opposite area. Since we are looking for buys, here we're within a seller's area. In this situation, since we're looking for sells, we're within a buyer's area. So we need the price to give us a pullback potentially to those sellers' areas or a break of these particular levels, and that will confirm that this buyers will no longer be giving you issues, and you should be good to go to continue with your selling opportunities here on the British pound against the Canadian dollar. So hope that is clear on the British pound against the Canadian dollar. As we move on to the next currency pair we do have, right here is the euro against Canadian dollar. Similar situation as the British pound against the Canadian dollar, where we did end up getting a pullback coming in on Friday, because we were within an area where they're buyers. We did not necessarily get the price breaching to the downside. You can see we managed to get the pullback coming in. If you do note the time, that was at around 4:30. That's when the price actually started coming to the downside. Now, today, we have adjusted the levels, but our bias is pretty much similar, where we are going to be looking for selling opportunities. Right now, we have identified these three areas of interest where the sales could work out from. But if you realize, similar story, we are within an area where they're buyers. So one of two things needs to happen. Either these buyers are going to give up and you find the price breaking this area to the downside and holding below. And if we do see that, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. But if this price right here was not good enough to actually allow us to make a new low, chances are we might need a better price than this, and we will still potentially find the price coming back within this particular support and resistance area, potentially even go up a bit higher inside a few people to look for buying opportunities. And if we see the price holding below, then we should be able to grab some nice selling opportunities here on the euro against the Canadian dollar. So wait to see what ends up happening as we move on to the next Canadian dollar pair we do have. So right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. And our bias here, it was looking for selling opportunities on Friday. Still a similar situation today. Now you can see what our game plan was. We were within an area where the sellers, so definitely a good place to look for selling opportunities. But we needed signs that the big boy sellers were actually still interested here. And it has incited people to look for buying opportunities. So you can see within this particular area, you can see the way the price is coming down. I remember even explaining this one on Friday, the way the sellers were coming down was not very convincing, meaning we might need to get the price coming up a bit higher than this particular area. You can see as the price came up, no aggressive sellers, but once the price came to the upside, you can see how aggressive the sellers came in. We got a very nice probe right there. And you can see the price gave us confirmation, pulling back within the support and resistance area before the market took off very nicely towards the buyer's area. And remember, if you do note the time, when the price actually came back in and started breaking this area to the downside, this was just after the New York Stock Exchange did end up opening before the market managed to come down very, very nicely. So today, the bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. Now, the reason why we will still be focusing on the same areas that we did have on Friday is because right now we have not gotten any confirmation that this level right here at the bottom has fully been reached. Remember what we always mention, whenever the price comes to the downside, we want the price to give us a pullback. If we see the price holding below, then we should be able to find a very nice selling opportunity there. But if you could easily find this ends up being some sort of probe, and you could easily find the price. If it comes back in, then chances are we could be coming back all the way to this support and resistance area before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So we'll see what ends up happening, but we definitely know the New Zealand dollar is the pair that is trying to bring this currency down, which we'll have a look at on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. But for right now, we'll be watching out for those levels. If I go up to the 1 hour time frame, we've identified the next problem area is right here where the blue support and resistance area is. So if we do actually get the price breaching and holding below this main support and resistance area, we can clearly see what the market has easily done before. You can clearly see the market was still respecting this area, but as it comes down, if we do not get the price coming back in and holding below, it just ends up being a probe right there. And you can easily see after that probe, the way the market ended up taking off. So that's the reason why it's very important to wait for that pullback and get confirmation that the price is actually going to be holding below this area for us to look for those selling opportunities. So hope that is clear on the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar as we move on to the next and last Canadian dollar pair we do have, which is the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. Now on Friday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out, although they were not necessarily, or at least fully respected, because you can clearly see we were so close within the seller's area. We got the price coming down. It did not hold within this buyer's area, so you can see the price came down lower. Came so close towards our main buyer's area. As you can see, there was a pin bar right there. If you do know the time, that was around 4 o'clock. Remember, the US market was open at that time. You can see after that, the price did manage to take off. So it was unfortunate we could not get the price coming back exactly to the area that we did end up wanting. However, you can see later on, the price did manage to come back and hold above. So if you did manage to grab a trading opportunity over trading during Asia, then you can clearly see the trading opportunity work then. So today, the bias is pretty similar, still going to be looking for buying opportunities. But as you can clearly see, we are very close within the seller's area. So the game plan is similar to what we had on Friday, since we are basically within the same area that we were. So we'll wait to see whether or not we can end up getting the pullback, seeing if it's actually going to hold above this area. If we do end up seeing that, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities there. Don't be surprised if it comes or tries to push a bit lower, but you can see this is a small support and resistance area. Those who have done the AMP and one-on-one should know that this could be an area where the price could react from. So don't necessarily just look for your entry there and just put your stop loss just below them, or you could end up waiting. But once the price comes back in and holds above, then that would be a much safer buying opportunity to be able to grab. But remember, you could easily find the price continuing to go to the upside, especially if the Canadian dollar keeps on showing strength or the yen actually continues showing its weakness, since we did end up having some yen news early in the morning, and we are expecting to see some weakness on the Japanese yen pairs. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening on this kind of pair, but ideally that is the game plan that we're going to be looking. So I hope that's clear on all the Canadian dollar pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched the Canadian dollar pairs with all the pairs on the sell side. So right now we're going to move on to the US dollar pairs and do the exact same thing. So we'll start off here with the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Now on Friday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that I had pointed out. Now we're hoping to see a pullback coming in. Unfortunately, that was not the case. You can see how the market was choppy during the Asian session and just during the London session, just still holding. But once the US market came in, as you can see at 3, that's when it did end up getting the strength to actually come to the downside. So it was unfortunate we could not necessarily get the price coming up a bit higher, but we can still see the price did manage to continue coming down lower. Now, we've adjusted the level slightly, but overall, we will still be looking for selling opportunities. We'll be focusing on these 3 areas. Aggressive sellers right there at the top. So as long as we're holding below this spread support and resistance area, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. Now, there's a possibility due to the fact that the market, as it managed to end up giving us a pullback within this particular area, and the fact that we've attempted to go lower and we have not been able to make a new low, there's potential that this price right here might not necessarily be good enough. So if that's the case, don't be surprised if the price looks or tries to incite a few people to look for buying opportunities. The price goes up higher. But if you see the price coming back in, and especially if you find aggressive sellers giving you a pullback, then you should be able to find a very nice selling opportunity available for us here on the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So hope the game plan is clear. Right now, it definitely seems like a pullback is coming in. So you definitely don't want to just be jumping in on your selling opportunities in the face of these strong buyers. So let's see it and see how far the buyers can get to before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So hope the game plan is clear as we move on to the next US dollar pair. So right here, we have the US dollar against the Swiss franc. Similar situation, or at least we did end up having this kind of pair on Friday. So bias was to look for buying opportunities, and it is still the same situation today. It kind of looks similar to what actually happened on Friday. You can see where we were. We do end up going back. That's exactly what we were looking at on Friday, and you can see it's basically the same thing, or at least where we are. So we will be looking for buying opportunities. You can see on Friday, we wanted a pullback to come in. People have managed to come back in. I had pointed out this support and resistance area, saying the fact that it's a similar story as I pointed out in the Australian dollar. The fact that we managed to get the price coming up, we got a pullback and the price managed to go up, but we could not get a new high. It meant that this price was not good enough. And you can clearly see we came to incite many people to now start looking for selling opportunities, but it was just a probe. You can see we're hoping to see the price potentially come back and hold above the yellow support and resistance area, but you can see it managed to come back up and hold above the blue support and resistance area. And at that point in time, they could have been a buying opportunity available. So today, the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. There's potential that the market could be in some sort of range. And if that's the case, then you definitely know the best place to look for your buying opportunities is at the bottom of the range. But if these sellers are not able to necessarily do much, then we could easily find the price breaking this area to the upside and holding above, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities there as well on the US dollar against the Swiss franc. We'll wait to see what ends up happening on this kind of pair. Right now, definitely a pullback could potentially be coming in. The question is where the big boy buyers are. So we need to see how far the market could get to. Could end up still coming back to this blue support and resistance area. That's the reason why we still have it there. But we will be focusing on the yellow support and resistance area to potentially look for our buying opportunities. So hope the game plan is clear on the US dollar against Swiss franc. As we move on to the next US dollar pair. So right here, we have the British pound against the US dollar. And our bias here was to look for selling opportunities on Friday. Now, we did have these levels right here, or this is highlighted areas. Now, earlier on Friday, had pointed out that the price was within this particular support and resistance area, but had pointed out that it had bounced off this blue level right here. So that was a level to watch out for as well. And that's the reason why I did mention that we either wait for a pullback coming in or getting proper confirmation that this yellow support and resistance area has been breached. So during the London session, we managed to actually start getting a pullback coming in, but you can see at 3 o'clock how aggressive the sellers reacted. So this was 3. Unfortunately, we could not get all the way to the sellers, but once the sellers came down, You can see the price giving us a pullback, showing us confirmation it was holding below that area. And it did end up lining up within the market opening time. So I guess this one was around 4:30. So if you did manage to grab your trading opportunity around then in the New York Stock Exchange, did manage to end up coming to the downside. Now remember, as you can even see right here, the blue support and resistance area was still being respected, because once it was breached to the downside, we can see the price still pulled back to that area and attempting to come down to challenge this particular low. So today, the bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. Now, we've got the price coming down lower, struggling to make a new low, then we definitely know we need a better price, potentially to incite a few more people to look for buying opportunities before we're able to look for the sells coming in. So our focus is going to be on these three areas to look for selling opportunities from. Right now, we do not want to jump in on any selling opportunity, even though we're within an area where the sellers. The question you need to ask yourself is, why are the buyers coming in very aggressive? If they are, you need to be patient, wait for them to actually slow down, or wait for signs that the big boy sellers are actually back in. So wait to see whether or not the price starts going to the upside, looking as if it's coming up. But if you see the sellers coming down very aggressive and we see the price holding below, then we should be able to find a nice selling opportunity there. But alternatively, this level doesn't hold. Remember, the price can still come back all the way to this red support and resistance area, or react within this seller's area. Remember, we always mention buy with buyers and sell with sellers. So even though our focus is looking for potential selling opportunities within these areas, you can clearly see the levels where the sellers have reacted from before. You can see this is an area where sellers have pushed to the downside. This is where the market pushed down on Friday. And you can clearly see there's another major sellers area there. So our focus is, as the pullback is coming in, to wait to see what kind of reaction are we going to get in this first area. And you can already see when the price came back within here, look at that kind of reaction. They don't necessarily think that is the aggressive seller or the big boy seller. So the buyers need to look to see, if it's not this level, what kind of reaction are we going to get within the next level? If we do not see aggressive sellers, then chances are we'll be waiting for the price all the way at the top until we see those aggressive sellers coming in. And remember, if it lines up within the market opening times, so 10, 11, 3, and 4:30, then that could end up giving you a very nice trading opportunity. At least it improves the probability of that trade working out. So hope the game plan is clear. We'll wait to see what ends up happening on the British pound against the US dollar. Let's move on to the next US dollar pair, which is the euro against the US dollar. Now on Friday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. The sells did work out, but was quite choppy. As you can see during the London session, we were within a buyer's area. We did manage to get the pullback, but unfortunately could not get the price coming back all the way to the main seller's area. You can see it still reacted within an area where sellers have reacted from before. If you do know the time, that was at 3 o'clock during the US market open, and you can see the price did manage to actually come down during the US session. But now today, the buyers is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So we have identified 3 areas of interest, which are pretty similar to what we had on Friday. But the fact that we've not really been able to make a new low, chances are, even though we had this blue support and resistance area, we did see the market react from there, chances are this price was not good enough. So if that's the case and we have our yellow support resistance area right there at the top, chances are we might react within this higher up area right there. We'll wait to see what kind of reaction we do end up getting. We incite a few more people to look for buys, because most people trying to follow the market structure will start seeing that the market was making lower lows and lower highs. But once the price goes up, they start thinking that the market is starting to make higher highs and higher lows. Most likely that is just going to be a pullback. And that's the reason why we will wait to see what kind of reaction we do end up getting within this particular seller's area. So hope the game plan is clear on the euro against the US dollar. To move on to the next US dollar pair. Right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. Now, this trade worked out quite well on Friday. You can see the areas that we had pointed out looking for selling opportunities. Now, the price did manage to end up giving us a small pullback during the London session. The bars were coming up quite choppy, which is what we wanted. We do note the timing. That was at exactly 3 o'clock where the price was back within the seller's area. And you can see the US big boy did manage to take this price down very nicely to the downside. So today, the bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities, and we'll still focus on the same areas that we had pointed out. Remember, I had looked at the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar and mentioned that this push to the downside, the way the price is reaching, does look similar to the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. We are starting to make a new low potentially. So chances are the New Zealand dollar is the one that's attempting to show weakness. But remember, we need to get confirmation that this is actually a breach. So remember, if we do end up getting the price coming back in and it holds below, then we might be able to find a nice selling opportunity available for us on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. But be careful. You could easily find the price coming back in and holding above. If you do see that, chances are we could be getting the price coming back within this seller's area before we're able to look for selling opportunities then. So in this situation, we wait to see what ends up happening. You can be able to have a look at the other New Zealand dollar pairs. If you do see the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar also pulling back and holding, then at that point in time, you know that it is the New Zealand dollar pairs, and you could potentially end up choosing between one of the two to end up grabbing. So we wait to see what ends up happening on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar as we move on to the next and last currency pair we do have, which is the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, on Friday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities, hence the three areas that we had pointed out. Now, we have adjusted the level slightly today, but you can see on Friday, we're back in a seller's area during the market open. So you can see the market did manage to end up giving us a pullback throughout the London session. We're hoping to see the price holding within this particular area. But you can see the price looked as if it was coming to the downside. This was during the US market open, it tended to come up. But later on, once it breached to the upside, although this one might have been a bit difficult to end up grabbing, you can see the price did manage to hold above that particular area. Once it came to the upside, holding above, then you can see after that, the price did manage to continue going to the upside. But today, the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. So we'll focus on these three areas to potentially look for these buys. Right now, we're so close within the seller's area, so definitely not a good place to look for your buying opportunity just yet. We are starting to see the pullback coming in. So wait to see how this market comes back in. Wait to see if we can end up getting the price holding above the support and resistance area. We could potentially look for a buying opportunity, but also watch out for the level that we did end up having on Friday, because there's potential, especially when you notice the way the market is going to the upside. It's not necessarily as convincing. One thing, a concept we teach within our courses is the difference between a trending market and a channeling market. Most people say, yes, this market is making higher highs and higher lows, and it's probably trending. But one thing to take note of is in a trending market, just a quick example, the market does end up respecting the support and resistance area. And when it breaks that level quite high before it actually ends up getting a pullback. Now, a channel will still do the same thing in terms of making high highs and higher lows, but the support and resistance area will not be respected. So you might find that, yes, is the support and resistance area, it will not react from there. It will still come up, a bit lower, but as you can clearly see, it's still making the higher high. So when you see the market making a new high, but the high is not as big, then you know that there's a possibility that it could be a channeling market. And you can see the way the highs that were made within here, the previous high was here, and the next one is just here. There's a chance that the market might end up coming back a bit lower in a channeling state, giving us a deeper pullback before we do end up finding the price going to the upside. So that's one thing to take note of and potentially end up watching out on this pair. You can see if I quickly just throw up the channel, could easily find the market respecting something similar to that. So wait to see what ends up happening. You can see the blue level lines up with the bottom of the channel. So potentially could end up coming down there, but we will wait to see what ends up happening on the US dollar against the Japanese yen. So hope that is clear on all the currency pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched all the pairs on the buy side. So that's the Canadian dollar and the US dollar with the pairs on the sell side. So right now we'll have a look at the indices before we end up moving on to gold and silver. So starting off with the indices, we'll start off with the NAS 100. So on the NASDAQ, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. Now you can see, just zoom out a bit, you can see the areas that we had pointed out to look for our selling opportunities. Now, it was quite tricky to end up grabbing these sells because you can see the price managed to end up holding below this area. We're hoping to see more of a pullback within that particular area, but you can see at 10 o'clock, the price was back up, and you can see that's when the price managed to actually continue going down throughout the London session. Now, we're hoping to see the price coming back down within the main buyers area here, but it seems like it ended up finding some sort of reaction area where the buyers reacted from before. And you can see the way the price managed to come to the upside. So this pair is a bit confusing. At least we've adjusted the level slightly, just based on the fact that overall, we are still within a seller's market. I will go to a higher time frame to look at it. So sometimes the time frames of trades do end up changing. So we're going to see. Just quickly go up to a higher time frame. Right now, the way the market is reacting, especially if I go up to the 4 hour, You can see overall, we have been coming to the downside where you can clearly see these big sellers right here did manage to push the market down lower. And since then, we are still within this seller zone. So as long as we're holding below that red support resistance area, we will be in a selling opportunity. However, what's happening now is just a pullback, as you can clearly see the way the market is coming to the upside. So overall, we're waiting to see at what point in time the big boy sellers are actually going to come in. You can see on the pullback phase, these sellers did end up attempting to try and show themselves, but the next time the price got to that same area, look at the way the sellers reacted. So meaning it wasn't necessarily the main sellers to actually to come to the downside, meaning that this price maybe was not good enough. And that's maybe the reason why you're finding the price looking as if it's coming a bit higher up. So overall, we will still be looking for selling opportunities. Right now, it's still on the pullback phase. So wait to see at what point in time these buyers are going to die out. So you can clearly see even the way the buyers are coming up does seem to be very, very slow. So wait to see at what point in time the sellers are actually going to show themselves. So it's either one of two things. The price is actually going to end up either coming to the upside, back within the main seller's area before we end up finding our selling opportunities coming in for us. Or alternatively, you could easily find the sellers reacting within this area. You can clearly see we are within a seller's area. With the price holding below, then we could end up looking for selling opportunities. Do watch out for this major support and resistance area. But it's a similar situation. If you can get the price breaching and holding below this area, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities to come down a bit low. So we wait to see what ends up happening, but hopefully we can end up waiting to see if the price will either continue coming down or if it will breach to the upside. But for right now, I think for this one, it might be best even just being on the sidelines until we see a clear direction of the big boys and at what point in time the big boy sellers will actually be interested in this pair. So hope that is clear on the NASDAQ as we move on to the next pair that we do have, which is the US 30 or the Dow Jones. So on Friday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Now, the price was within an area where the sellers on Friday in the morning, and we wanted to see a pullback or a breach and hold to the upside. You can see in this situation, we managed to get the pullback, and the pullback worked out very, very nicely. As we keep on mentioning, you can see the price looked as if it was coming to the downside, ended up giving us a probe, coming back in, showing us confirmation that the price is holding above, and that would have given us a very nice buying opportunity. Similar situation, even as you can see with the illustration that we had pointed out, waiting for the price to come back in after it gives us a probe before we're able to look for buying opportunities. And although this one did end up happening around 6:30, so unless you were on your charts on Friday at 6:30, you probably might have missed that trading opportunity. But today, the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. Now, the reason why we still have these major levels, or at least the levels that we still had on Friday, even though the price looks as if it has breached this area to the upside, is because remember, in order for a level to be breached, we need to see the price actually holding above. Especially if I zoom out, you can see this is a very strong seller's area where whenever the price has approached this area, you can see what kind of reaction we get. In this particular area, the sellers do end up reacting. And you can see above here, the market has kept on giving us some probes. Not once has the price actually held above this yellow support resistance area, even though we're back within an area where you can clearly see the market has spiked up to and come down from that particular area. So that's the reason why today we will still be looking for buying opportunities. But the reason why we're still focusing on the same areas and not necessarily adjusting them yet is because we have seen the market probe this particular high many times. So if we are able to get the price coming back in, but in this situation, it is able to hold above, then you definitely know we've officially broken that level and we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities then. But if the price comes back in, which is still a possibility, and it holds below, then chances are we could be coming back down a bit lower still before we're able to look for our buying opportunities. But for right now, you definitely need to end up waiting for a pullback, not start jumping in on your buying opportunities there. You can see we're within a very strong seller's area, and those sellers could potentially end up reacting. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening on the US 30. Hope this game plan is clear on that. As we move on to silver. Now, silver on Friday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities, and you can see the three areas that I had pointed out. Now, the market did manage, or at least it looked as if it had reached this area to the downside, and it kept on holding within this particular area. And you can see as the pullback started coming back in, The market opening times at 3, what kind of reaction we got. Similar situation at 4:30. The market was just probing and spiking within this area before it did manage to come down. So we are starting to get a pullback, which is a good thing, especially if you compare how the sellers came down with how the buyers are coming up. It's definitely a good thing for us to look for selling opportunities, but it does not mean that we're just jumping on our selling opportunities here. Yes, we want to see the weak. Yes, we want to see the weak buyers coming in. However, we need to also see aggressive sellers as well. So if you're following the story of how the market is coming up, you can see the way the buyers are coming in. Buyers are still looking strong, even though the sellers right here. So the main thing we want to see, if we see aggressive sellers coming in, then on that pullback, we should be able to look for a selling opportunity then. Alternatively, you could find that this market might not necessarily react from this area, or you could end up easily finding the price looking as if it's breaking this area to the upside. All those people who are selling, definitely most people have their stop losses just above this area. So don't be surprised the price spikes to the upside. Now that's when you end up seeing aggressive sellers. You see the price holding below, and you should be able to find a very nice selling opportunity here. But remember, with gold and silver, and as well as the indices were purely technical, meaning if the price could still come back all the way to this red support and resistance area, and we will still be looking for selling opportunities. Only if the price breaks and holds above this red support and resistance area, we actually change our bias and actually start looking for buying opportunities there. So wait to see what ends up happening. You can end up watching the story of how the buyers and sellers are reacting here. Or if you do want to be a bit more conservative, you can see there's some buyers who are pushing up within this particular area. Could potentially end up waiting for the price to break and hold below that area before you're able to look for selling opportunities. But if you are going to do that, you definitely need to watch out for all these other areas where the buyers are. You can see there's a buyers reacted from there, buyers have reacted from there as well. So just watch out for that on gold. Sorry, on silver, apologies. So hope that is clear, at least on the game plan of what we're looking at doing on silver, as we move on to the next and last pair that we do have, which is gold. Now on gold, our bias on Friday was to look for buying opportunities, but remember I had pointed out that we needed to watch out for this particular bias area because the way the market seemed, it looked as if it was going to break this area to the downside. And you can see the way the buyers reacted, hardly any reaction here. I'd even pointed out this blue support and resistance area saying that we are able to get the price breaching and holding above that area, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities. However, the buyers came in very, very slowly, struggling within this area. We did see the market attempting to break that area to the upside, but at 4:30, you can see that the price really did end up coming down very aggressive, confirming that it definitely was a selling opportunity there. So today, the bias is going to be looking for selling opportunity for sales as long as we're holding below this red support and resistance area. Right now, we're putting a pullback back within the level that was broken, and you can clearly see the way the sellers came in comparison to the buyers. Definitely a good sign, but we need to end up waiting. At what point in time are these buyers going to give up? So one thing we can take note of, we can clearly see this is the area where the buyers seem to be pushing up from. So if the price is going up higher, we just want to see at what point in time will the seller decide to come back in aggressively. If you see the price falling below, you could end up looking for a selling opportunity there. Or if you do want to be a bit more conservative, this particular buyer's area, if we are able to get the price reaching and holding below, then we should be able to find a nice selling opportunity available for us as well on gold. But remember, if the price breaks and falls above this red support and resistance area, then our bias will switch again and we will start looking for buying opportunities then. But as long as we're holding below this red SNR, price can still come back all the way there and our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So hope the game plan is clear on all the kinds of pairs. As you can see, we'll mix and match all the pairs on the sell side. I'm sorry, on the buy side with the pairs on the sell side, including the indices. So I guess that's it. Let me look to see if there are any questions on the chat box, which I'm not seeing any, which is okay. Hope everything has been clearly understood. Remember, we do have some fundamentals coming out today during the London session. Majority of them are PMIs. So one thing to take note of, you can be able to click on any of them and you will be able to get information on what they are. But one thing to take note of is with PMIs, the main focus is the number 50. So if you find the number is above 50, then it's a good thing. If it's below 50, it is a negative thing. As you can clearly see today, We had yen news early in the morning, and you can see they are below 50, and it is weaker than before. So we are expecting to see some volatility as well on the charts a bit during the London session, but we will wait to see what ends up happening. So, okay, I'm seeing a question coming in. Is from Lal. You're saying on the indices COT report that shows commercials have a large open interest in them. Possible reason for the stall, but overall still bullish on them. Yeah, because now even with the indices and especially with such, you need to also be careful about, especially when you go to a higher time frame. Overall, if you look at this market is still going to the upside, especially if you're looking at it on the daily time frame. There's a possibility that these movements to the downside could just be pullbacks, and we could end up finding the market continuing to go to the upside. You can tell, you see, could potentially be in some huge range, bouncing between these levels right here. And remember, with ranges, we do end up getting probed. So this level is still holding. The market hasn't reached that particular location. So could end up easily finding, yes, the price going to the upside. But one thing for us, especially with indices and the commodities as well, is we focus mainly on the technical. I know reading, noting what is happening as well could end up giving you some bias, but the thing about news, it's all based on your interpretation and my interpretation. You could read the same piece of news, but have two different interpretations. So that's the reason why at the end of the day, everything, all the news, everyone who has talked, it is all reflected back on the charts. So you can be able to see when the buyers are buying and when the sellers are selling. So totally agree with you, having that knowledge as well, and it could end up still being bullish on them. You can see that's the same situation as well on the NASDAQ as well. Since we did manage to go to the upside, this could just be a pullback. You know that the way the markets end up refreshing was similar situation here. You can see the way the price was going to the upside. It incites people to start looking for sells. People think it's a seller's market, but it's still for the buyer. So that's potentially what could be happening right now. The price has gone to the upside, but we're back within a major support and resistance area. You could easily see these sellers trying to sell, but you could easily find the price continuing to go to the upside. But we'll wait to see what ends up happening. So I guess that's it. And thank you so much for your question, Lyle. Glad to see you here joining us again today. So remember, guys, if you don't mind to take any setups based on things we do share, feel free to send them into us. Our contact details are in the video description. And if you do want to reach out to us for anything else, especially education, or just needing some mentorship, just feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details are right there. So once again, thank you guys so much. Hope you have an amazing trading day. God bless, happy trading, and bye for now. Cheers, guys.